What is vaporware and how can you avoid it? That's what I want to talk about today. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney, and for over 20 years, I've drafted and negotiated a variety of technology-related contracts in courts across the country and negotiated with a variety of different software vendors. So, what is vaporware? And I think it really depends on your point of view. Without a doubt, hype and exaggeration have been par for the course in ERP software sales for time immemorial. Salespeople have always sold the sizzle and not so much the steak. I think in a favorable light, and the light most favorable to the software vendors, vaporware, I think you can characterize it as an accelerated mode of marketing that doesn't always really represent the pace at which the products are being developed and distributed to their customer base. Alternatively, I think you can look at it as a technology product that is announced but then never gets released, or its release is canceled. I think that the good news as an ERP customer really is that vaporware is, for the most part, on the decline, at least in the ERP space. And I think that's due to a lot of things. And one of those things is really that cloud migration is really being pushed on customers, and what goes hand in hand with that really is a continuous delivery of updates to the products, upgrades to the products, and you're not really in a scenario like you would be in an on-premise solution where you're waiting for big releases or updates to that software. But I think without a doubt, products are going to emerge with bugs. They're going to emerge with security vulnerabilities. They're going to have problems that need to be overcome. And again, I think that's par for the course. And every new technology breakthrough, I think, has a risk of vaporware. There's a vaporware risk associated with it. And as we move to a world that really is becoming more focused on AI, I think you see it there with these big claims of functionality that really don't stand up to scrutiny. So on one hand, I think in the traditional ERP space that vaporware really is on the decline, and you're seeing it less and less, really primarily because of the delivery model. But then on the other hand, as this adoption of artificial intelligence becomes more common, you're going to see inflated claims as to what the software can do, the AI software, what it can do, what the functionality is, and what problems it's going to be able to solve. And some of those are just not going to be able to live up to the hype. One of the other issues that we will see in the cloud space in particular, and I think this really is associated with the push or the migration to the cloud, and software vendors really, trying to incent their customer base to move into the cloud. And whether this is really a vaporware scenario or not, I think it's somewhat debatable, but it certainly is problematic. Certainly, I think it's not a scenario where vendors are intentionally trying to mislead their customers. But what I do think it's really that there's such a push to get this cloud revenue that some of these cloud products are not fully baked. They're not ready for prime time. And so while they may contain limited functionality when you're looking and comparing it to the on-premise solution that you may be migrating from, it contains that functionality, but it is not as robust and it is not as full service as, say, that legacy system is. So whether you want to characterize that as vaporware or not, I don't think you necessarily do, but it's certainly something that is akin to that. I think, as you go through the sales process with any vendor, you need to be looking at all of these representations, promises of functionality with a jaundiced eye. You need to be incredibly critical. In the lawsuits that we litigate, we will see, I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but we certainly see it, scenarios where software demonstration or software functionality is demonstrated to a customer in a software demo, and it doesn't exist. And that, to me, is really a true demonstration or a true definition of what would constitute vaporware, at least in that kind of a misrepresentation scenario. You've got software that doesn't exist where the vendor is making a representation that it actually does. Like I said, I don't think it's an incredibly common scenario, but that's a classic fraud scenario, and we do see that. We will see software functionality that is represented as existing that doesn't actually exist. I think what is more likely that happens is scenarios where there's really kind of a disconnect between the functionality that the customer is expecting to get in the product and what the product actually does. You might, as a customer, tell your sales representative or your ERP vendor, we want software that can do this type of, a function. We want this feature in our product. Can the software do that? And the answer is yes, but really the answer should be yes, but it doesn't do it very well, or yes, but it doesn't do it in the same way that your legacy system did, or the answer is yes, but it doesn't do it efficiently. And how do you get into that scenario? And I think software is different than other types of products. Software is inherently modifiable and it's inherently customizable. And I think this leads to, exaggerated promises of functionality to some extent that maybe, aren't done with any kind of nefarious intent, but they're done in a way to make a sale, and they are not necessarily untrue as so much as they might be half true. And I think as a customer, you need to go into that into that process with your eyes wide open and really be aware of what you're looking at, what is being sold to you. You need to ask the right questions, and you need to have an understanding of, does that functionality or feature exist? You want to ask for their product roadmap. You want to see, what is in the software today, what is going to be in the software tomorrow, and what's the delta between, what is there now and what is going to be there in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and can we live with that product roadmap? You have to really get an understanding of what the gaps in functionality are going to be, and you can only get there by having a very good understanding of what your business requirements are, what your current state is, and what your future state is going to look like, because then you can do a comparison. You can rate the functionality that you've seen, you can compare it to what what your current state is, and you can make an assessment as to whether it's going to meet your needs in a future state. And I think if you do that, then I think you're putting yourself in a position to be successful. You really want to know, what exists today, what's on the product map, and when is it going to be available. Well, I hope you found this information helpful. To the extent you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. Thank you.